Hello, this is Rajesh Vedantam from the NYU Grossman School of Medicine, and I'll be speaking to you today about teams, networks, and training in the context of implementation research. No corporate disclosures, and these are some of the federal and AHA grants I might discuss during my time with you today. As I have presented previously, I see implementation research as a transdisciplinary team science involving input and perspectives from qualitative methods and qualitative experts, biostatistical and quantitative collaborators, colleagues from the economics and business side of academia, and colleagues from information and communication technology and human performance engineering. All of these and more need to fit together and speak a common language in order to be able to really be able to conduct implementation research effectively. But working across disciplines can be very challenging. First of all, there's even some challenges about how to describe or what vocabulary to use when doing this type of team science, whether these are multidisciplinary teams, interdisciplinary teams, or transdisciplinary teams. Multidisciplinary generally means independent, sequential contributions from folks from different perspectives or different fields of study. Interdisciplinary is a bit more interactive, joint activity, and transdisciplinary is even more so, more integrative, synthesized, and in a way almost bringing everyone together to try and speak a common language. And it is towards a transdisciplinary aspiration that I believe implementation research is really needing to go in. Again, in terms of vocabulary, working across disciplines can be challenging. Different words have different meanings in different fields. So mediation and interaction have different meanings in the context of statistics as opposed to critical qualitative theory. Similarly, notions of structure and power have, again, very different meanings in the context of systems math or statistics versus qualitative research. Similarly, I presented to you previously the Precis 2 wheel, where you're able to score yourself based on whether you're a little bit more flexible with respect to these characteristics in real world and pragmatic, or whether you're less flexible in the context of much more tightly controlled trials. And again, here you can be quote unquote loosey-goosey and a little bit more like implementation research and pragmatic, or very tightly controlled, almost laboratory-based randomized studies that are more explanatory. And again, there can be tension amongst team members who may come from one or the other camp, and something to just be aware of. There is also sometimes tensions and challenges with respect to the velocity of engagement. A lot of people tend to want to plan a lot before implementing. A decent number of people wish to just jump right in and start implementing without wasting time, quote unquote, wasting time on the planning. There are, again, tensions between those who wish to have scientific, quote unquote, purity versus those who recognize the reality and the messiness of implementation. And finally, in the context of this transdisciplinary aspiration, sometimes there can be tensions between my team versus our team, the informatics team versus the statistical team, the qualitative team versus the implementing team, et cetera. And I think those challenges need to be addressed in the context of this transdisciplinary team science as well. Working across countries and cultures now, if we take implementation research related to chronic diseases into the global scene, there are many challenges that can arise here as well. I've listed many here, and I don't wish to bore you all with a laundry list of issues, but these are all issues that have come up in the context of work that I have done with colleagues in Kenya and elsewhere. Issues related to communication, whether it be by email or phone or WhatsApp or obviously now Zoom. Who controls decision-making with respect to even staffing or implementation details. What is the balance of responsibilities with respect to implementation versus analysis versus writing versus dissemination? Role expectations similarly. Again, this challenge between how much focus on implementation versus how much focus on research. Very important issues related to equity in terms of authorship, in terms of grant writing, in terms of salary. Similarly, allocation of time and salaries can be challenging across countries and across cultures. Whether something is being done for the mutual benefit, and that's obviously a hopeful goal. And obviously capacity building can be something that can be challenging, although again, an aspirational goal in this process as well. There can be challenges with respect to the quote-unquote absentee researcher, somebody who's on a grant or listed on a project, but it doesn't really actually get actively involved. There can be challenges with respect to the mobility and transitions of staff, people who get trained, who then move on to other jobs or other institutions. That can be challenging for the team as well. Who owns the data? Who owns the specimens in the context of these global research partnerships? Authorship, as I've mentioned before. Research ethics that maybe has different considerations in different places. Again, whose standards and whose values need to be followed in this case. Budgeting decisions can many times lead to challenges and conflicts as well. Again, this issue of money and how it relates to power, how it relates to decision-making, how it relates to control. And finally, I think it's impossible to dissociate any engagement in global implementation research from the historical legacies, vestiges, colonialism, etc. Some of the approaches that can be adopted to try and mitigate these challenges include trying to engage in thoughtful management approaches, trying to align incentives amongst the different researchers and stakeholders, to try and understand everybody's competing obligations and recognize challenges with respect to time commitments, to try and come to a consensus about which funders to approach and how to align the funders' incentives with the incentives of implementers on the ground, how to deal with indirect costs that may not necessarily oftentimes be sufficient, and how to try and appropriately compensate for the infrastructure in places that need to be up and running in order for projects to happen. This ties into this idea of cost recovery for research infrastructure, capacity building and trainees. I think obviously important in terms of sustainability and long-term productivity of the research enterprise at all institutions. And I think that coming up with mutually generated consensus-driven standard operating procedures can oftentimes be helpful to minimize confusion, conflicts, and disruptions. I think that moving on now from sort of small teams to larger networks, I think it's very important to sort of recognize that we are not alone in this endeavor, and that the GACD is one example of a transnational global research network that is really incredibly supportive, has now several years worth of experience with respect to some of those challenges that I've described, and has really tried to thoughtfully address those challenges, both individually in each team, as well as with sort of cross-team and cross-cutting lessons and shared experiences. And so it's really a wonderful research network that I think is important to try and tap into as much as possible. Some of the examples of some of these cross-cutting lessons that we've experienced over the years across our teams and across geography and across professional discipline include lessons related to task shifting, as we've written up here, lessons related to the important and increasingly recognized issue of multimorbidity, issues related to capacity building and lessons learned there. So there are several different joint publications that we have been able to generate as a result of these cross collaborations across the entire network. The GACD obviously is not the only network, sort of global or transnational network that exists. There are many others, and I think it's a very important type of experience, I think at any stage of our careers, to be able to participate in these larger research networks beyond our individual research teams. Now moving on to specifically training experiences, there are many types of implementation science or implementation research training experiences that are available these days. The landscape is really evolving quickly and really growing very rapidly. The GACD continues to have annual implementation science training schools, which obviously we're part of right now, and historically has also had implementation science workshops to align with the annual scientific meeting and other implementation science training opportunities in other forums. The National Cancer Institute at the National Institutes of Health in the US has incredible resources on its website. And I would highly encourage folks to tap into those resources. Here listed are 6 modules related to dissemination implementation research. They say in cancer, but to be honest with you, these modules are quite generically and generally relevant to any disease entity and research process. Washington University in St. Louis has a very interesting Institute for Implementation Science Scholars Program, the IS2 program. And they have summer institutes, they have matched mentor-mentee type of pairings, and a very nice program which I would encourage individuals to apply for. There is the annual conference on dissemination and implementation in health in the United States. That again is a very good opportunity to network, to learn about sort of cutting edge dissemination implementation research, and also for training opportunities as well. Once again, the Cancer Institute has webinars, cyber seminars, again, all of it publicly available and accessible via the web. There's also the Implementation Research Institute at Washington University, St. Louis, that I think can be very meaningful in terms of capacity building. The World Health Organization has now several different massive open online courses for implementation research. Members of our GACD network have actually been on the faculty for some of these as well. And the University of Washington has a very nice website and implementation science resource hub with training opportunities, resources for different topics in implementation research, seminal readings and articles, a very nice resource. Similarly, the University of Melbourne is a WHO collaborating center for implementation research related to non-communicable diseases, and has, again, a very nice resource platform for knowledge and practice. This is a very useful portion of that University of Washington website, specifically related to theories, models, and frameworks. Again, going over very nice process models, determinant frameworks, classic theories, implementation theories, and evaluation frameworks. And then a final comment that I wish to make on the topic of mentorship and sponsorship. This is a little cartoon that helps to sort of distinguish between the two, where mentorship is essentially aligned with someone saying, have you tried applying to speak at conferences and meetups already, sort of giving that suggestion. Whereas sponsorship is much more about, I recommended you for the speaking gig, can you do it? And so you can sort of tell the difference between mentorship and sponsorship there. This slide sort of lays it out a little bit more, that mentorship is focused on career development, personal and professional development, generally a very transformative, deep relationship, usually longitudinal, and very critical early in the career. Sponsorship, on the other hand, is really about career advancement, focusing on specific career advancing opportunities, can oftentimes actually be transactional, may not necessarily be all that longitudinal, can be episodic. And here they state that it's critical, let's say, mid and later career. There are obviously individuals who serve as both a mentor and a sponsor. And really, I think in a way that's sort of the sweet spot where you're able to sort of draw upon both the benefits of mentorship as well as the benefits of sponsorship. So again, here just another slide that sort of goes through some of the differences between being a mentor and being a sponsor. A mentor talks with you, whereas a sponsor talks about you. A mentor advises, a sponsor acts. A mentor helps to prepare you to move up. A sponsor makes sure you have all the right roles, etc. You can read through this entire list. And it's not that one is necessarily better than the other. I think both are necessary. And both are important for different stages of one's career and for different situations that may arise in one's career or in one's personal life. And so it's not really a judgment to say one is better than the other, but in a way it's really important to try and seek out individuals in your professional circles who can serve either as mentors or as sponsors or as both. And thank you very much.